And it's a good stress reliever. You come home from work, you need to get rid of your stress a little bit, and we get the byproduct of fresh vegetables. And one day maybe I carried a watermelon into Scott's office or whatever, and give him a watermelon, and he mentioned that his wife was needed a place more area to garden. Well, I says, I always have extra area, and so if your wife would want to come out and meet me and join in the fun, come on out. She did, and she hasn't stopped coming. And the most pleasure I get, though, is the byproduct of watermelon squash. I deliver a lot of watermelon and squash to a lot of senior citizens once it starts coming in. I take maybe 4 watermelon every day with me, and somebody gets it. Somebody has a bad day, and I happen to be there. You give them a watermelon, if they like watermelon, that just brightens their day. As the old story goes, my wife and I were going to my son's place for the weekend, and we stopped in Owatonna and ate a sandwich, and there was 20 senior citizens eating at this fast food place. Well, I had a bigger watermelon than what I got out here, and there was a lady floating around them, probably their advisor or whoever comes with them on the bus. And I says, could you use a watermelon? Sure. So I said, why don't you come out and join me, because it's going to roll right down your alleyway. It's too big, and we got to fasten it somehow in the bus. And so we did, and her eyes got a little big when she seen the watermelon. And she thanked me, and we got it in her bus, and we got it in the corner. And I no more sat down, and you could hear the bustle of the senior citizens. Did you see what he put in the bus for us? We got a big watermelon to eat now. And that makes your day. And I had 3 or 4 stops that we had made that weekend, and at every stop there was somebody that could use a whole bag of groceries or vegetables. One mother and daughter where we spent the night, their garden had been hailed out. Well, I carried in this big bag it had carrots and peppers and tomatoes and squash and green beans in it. And she was a clerk at this hotel, and she was registering the guests. And I brought this in and set it down, and here, this is for you. Well, right in the mid-sentence, she'd walk around the counter, give me a big hug, and forgetting all about the person who was supposed to be registering. But that makes your day. And that's why I do it more than anything else. Just a smile on somebody's face at the end of the day. And then Leo comes, and the garden is growing. And I'll let you start there, Leah.
Well, I've been gardening since I could remember. My parents had a garden. I came from a large family, and I guess I grew up eating the fruits and vegetables. Lived in a small town in west central Minnesota. Didn't know any different. That's where you got your fruits and vegetables, was from the garden. Moved away, went to college. Didn't get as much of that good food. And got my first job, and I rented a place, and there was no garden. So I met my husband Scott, got married, and the first time we were looking for a house, that's what I said I needed, was a garden in the backyard. So we had a small garden, and so I had to have a garden. Had a little garden out back, and by most means it was probably bigger than most people's little garden, but somehow, I think Bryce I first met you when you invited us out to have the kids pick a pumpkin out of his pumpkin patch. And then there was mention that Bryce might have a little room out there the next spring. So I came out with about enough potatoes to do about 12 hills of potatoes. Bryce came out with a 5-gallon pail of potatoes that were all ready to be planted, and he had a huge area dug up. And I had 5 little hills. So I went back to town, bought some more potatoes. Bryce had lots of open space. He tilled a huge area. And I had kept some seeds from watermelon and squash from the year before. Everything I had, I just planted. I kept planting until there was no more dirt, I guess, or soil. And that was about 6 years ago. And as he said, I just keep coming back. I enjoy gardening because I love the taste of fresh fruits and vegetables, and I now have 3 children, and I want them to see how their food is produced. And there's usually an abundance, which means that we have to figure out how to cook it. And so I try lots of different things that I wouldn't do if I was just going to the grocery store, because I wouldn't buy in abundance.
And it's an enjoyment watching the 3 girls come out. I enjoy having you girls come out. They're helping with the garden a lot of times. They're eating out of the garden, but that's why the swing set has been put up in the sandbox. I do have grandchildren that use it, but it's for whoever comes out to play. Now that we have a deck out here, we can sit and watch them enjoy the sand and the swings and the garden. It's fun to watch the girls eat right out of the garden. We don't use any herbicide or insecticide out there, so it's just about everything is pretty much edible right out of there after a fresh rain. It's all good. We do use a commercial fertilizer. I figure that's a lot healthier than using a hog resource or a cattle resource where you could get the disease through that. So we just use a commercial fertilizer and spread it on by hand, right down the row a little bit here and there when it supposedly calls for it. And the irrigation system runs right through the garden. So once he starts running the irrigator, every year is a different time, but it's about the right time for me. And once he starts, he puts on about 1 inch of rain every week.
And he's the farmer who farms the adjacent land to the garden.
And without that, the garden wouldn't be there, because we have a real shallow well that right now I run 40 gallons out of it, and basically you have pumped it dry. It can't keep up any more than that. So that's about our gardening. And our produce goes mostly senior citizens. The watermelon and squash. There's a few people that I take to, my relatives. They always say, whoops, Bryce has been here. If they haven't been home, there's some squash and watermelon or whatever on their front porch. They know I've been there if they aren't home.
I'd say the schools also, the preschool and the classes that my daughters are in, they do get fresh watermelon in the fall, and little pumpkins for decorating.
And then those that cook the senior citizen meal on wheels, they can accept fresh produce. So I keep them in. Once I start, I try to get them at least 1 watermelon every week, and now they'll start get a few squash here and there, and that's fresh. They say that they can tell if they bought that watermelon or if somebody delivered it to them. So, and I'm guessing the delivered one from us is a little sweeter. I'm hoping. If it isn't, they let me know. I have, it's been kind of funny. You'll have if they overripe melon or one that isn't quite ripe, they'll let you know. So when you hand deliver, well, I hope it's ripe and I hope it's not overripe, but here's a melon for you.
So you used to be a farmer, full scale. Do you miss the big stuff?
Not no more. I've been out of it long enough. When I had to quit, I still had a brother farm, so I was helping him in the spring and fall. He needed help then yet. But the last couple of years I haven't even done that. His equipment has gotten bigger, and he has had to hire somebody that's there full time in the fall instead of just in the evenings or in the weekends. So I don't miss it that much. You always kind of do, but not the stress that they have. The weather and the crop and the prices and everything has gone up for them. Like, you know, you look at the price of what they're getting per bushel of corn or soybeans right now, but land rent has gone up, price of the farmland has gone up, fertilizer has gone up. I maybe paid $50, $60 for a bushel or 130 count seed a bag. Well, now they're paying 150 or more for that same. So they're not making more, it's just a bigger amount. So it's in the back of your mind, oh, you miss it a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah. Well, you just I don't want to be pro painful stuff, but what do you miss the most from the old days of big farming?
What do we miss the most? Well, I custom combine out in South Dakota. I miss the friends I made there. I still meet a few of them once in a while, but some of them were the older farmers. I mean, they were 60 when I was maybe 40 or mid-30s. So they have gone already. A lot of them have passed on. And it was, and I worked for the smaller ranchers or grain operators out there, so it was either just me or me and their one combine. I missed that part. That was what I called my working vacation. Also, I went out there end of July or end of June and stayed out there almost, until first week of September. I was in South Dakota and North Dakota in 2 different spots. And I always went to the same spots, and after the first year I always had the same customers.
And that's fun?
That was fun for me. It was relaxing. It was not fun being away from home because Dorothy had to take care, we had 2 small children then. So that part was the tough part. In fact, I was out in South Dakota when our daughter was adopted. So when we got they called where I was at. Dorothy always knew what farmer I was at. She called there and said, Bryce has to come home. We had a call. We can go pick up our little girl. And they come right out to the field and says, give me the keys. You're leaving. Your little baby daughter is ready to pick up. So, and they understood. They said, go home. I was 4 hours away. So I quick ran back to Minnesota, and Dorothy and I ran up to the cities and picked up a new little baby girl. And both our children are adopted, and that's, if anything we miss, is times like that.
Yeah.
But now we're grandparents, so now we just go run up and pick up our grandsons. And we have 1 grandson and 2 granddaughters.
So, what's it now? You have the sort of history, this pre-garden history. Have you ever been without a garden?
Yeah, when I was in college, but I went to St. Ben's and the nuns had good fresh fruits, so that wasn't, and vegetables, so I didn't really miss it until I first got my first accounting job and was working tax seasons and busy all year round in the accounting office, and I missed the fresh fruits and vegetables. I'd go home and pick some up from my father, and I actually rented from a older lady when I first moved to Madelia, and house sat for her when she was down south. And she would love it when I brought the fresh fruits and vegetables. It reminded her, the taste was what she always said, was so much reminded her of her youth. And so yeah, I wasn't owning a house at the time, and when we went to look for a house, that was my first request. Was the house didn't have a spot in the backyard for a garden, and it wasn't really a house that I was interested in. And then I met Bryce, and he had a really big backyard.
And I come from a large family myself. I have 4 brothers and four sisters. No, 5 sisters. Plus, we had a lot of foster children come through our house, mostly babies. So there was always a big garden. My mom always had a big garden, so we were always in the garden. Somebody was always out there helping, doing whatever you do in the garden, pulling weeds. You'll never run out of them. And partly a half-acre potatoes always. For cold storage back then, your basements could store potatoes real good. And anything else, Mom did a lot of canning. We always had chickens that we would butcher, so that was always done. Probably don't miss that any. We once had when my wife and I were first married, we had chickens along with the garden. Well, the chickens ate the garden because they were free ranging, and then we had a pet fox and a pet dog, and they got in with the chickens. So that was kind of comical. They really didn't get many, but after that, we just didn't have chickens anymore.
Sounds like my parents' story with chickens, and produced a lifelong hatred in my mother. She can't stand anything with feathers. Gee, well, what's it like to garden with somebody? I mean, do you fight?
Bryce is very easygoing. As he said, it's a stress reliever. There was one year that there was not a weed in the garden. It was my first year of gardening with you, and I found out later that there was some stressful times, and he just would go out to the garden. Not real stressful, but planning a wedding can be, I think. It was your daughter's wedding.
When I got anything done.
And that was my first year, so I didn't think there was a weed that grew in his garden. But yes, I think found out that there are lots of weeds. Bryce does a good job of doing where I'm lacking. Probably wants to hit me over the head a few times, but
No.
he wouldn't. He's just too nice of a guy. But I try to plant different things, and Bryce sometimes, what was the edamames this year and last year, and they're just soybeans, Lea. So I try to introduce different things. Okra, we still really haven't. Have you tried those?
No, and I won't. That's up for her.
He does the potatoes. I like the sweet potatoes.
I like the green beans. I plant way more than we need, but
he gets really carried away with the green beans.
well, it's
to be
free
honest.
seed. I always have seed left over from last year, so it doesn't cost me anything.
And he keeps planting it.
Yeah.
All of it. It's more comical because we'll plant right over each other's crops quite often because we don't really mark things very well. And this year we had squash that I thought was maybe some stray things that had maybe reseeded from the year before, but I didn't recall ever planting anything looking like that. But we realized it was in my row that I had planted, and it was a sweet meat squash that I had ordered online. Haven't tried it yet, but look forward. I hope it's sweet because we got quite a few of them.
And when I planted this year I tried to start the watermelon earlier. Well, it turned out fine until the mouse got into the where I had them started. So then I had to do it a second time. And then when I did transplant them, I transplanted the first half in her pumpkins.
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, well, I don't tell you everything, Leah. So I had to transplant them the second time.
Oh yes, I do recall you asking me about that back section. And I said, I planted pumpkins.
In fact, that's the big ones that are out here in the wheelbarrows. That they've probably been transplanted 3 different times. And it just...
And every year we keep thinking we're going to write it down in a book. And we start it. And every year we start, but it just starts to be where we just start planning. And We always laugh because we always end up running out of room, but we always think we're downsizing.
Oh, that hasn't happened. I tilled a little extra spot over there, but it was a dry land. It was just some summer squash I had extra. I was just going to try it, and maybe it would rain. Well, they grew, but they were so dry, and just you couldn't keep up to them.
Well, you also got into the grapes.
Oh,
too,
I have a few grapes, but not many. Between the deer, they love grapes. The deer do. And since we're on the river here, they found out that deer also like pepper plants. They'll chop the tops right off. If you're not out there the same day, if we don't put a fence around it the same day that we plant them, you can pretty well find out that the deer like that. They'll eat fresh raspberry plants that you put down. They'll chew them right down to the ground, even if they got the pricklers on them. The grapes.
Edamames.
Yeah.
Peas.
They like.
Anything bunnies like. I
Lettuce.
should say the deer kind of like the same things I found out.
So the last couple of years we put up a fence now, and that has helped, but we don't get it up soon enough because I like to use the tractor in between the squash and the bigger rows. And I can't do that. Either that or I have to take the fence down every time I use the big tractor.
You found any formula for keeping the raccoons out of sweet corn, or do you even mess with sweet corn?
Well, this year they didn't bother this week. Fence, if you have a good electrical fence, that will help.
On the low end.
And that, yeah, it's got to be low. The first strand has to be real low, but then you have to keep the grass and the weeds out of that first strand. And here we also, since the irrigation runs through, we have to have 2 extra gates. So when they're driving the irrigation, they got to be open, and that's where the deer can really get in real easy then. And the same way with the coon. So our biggest problem is the deer.
The deer.
And we have wild turkeys, after you've just replanted, they'll come through and scratch. They'll till up a garden for you if they think there's something out there.
And there's lots of deer around here at the river bottom. It's a beautiful place in the fall to come and look at all the deer. Around December, is it?
Well, yeah, there's 2 herds.
Right around. Just sit and watch.
And years there have been about 50, 60 right out here in this cornfield. And then if you get on the other side of the river, there's another 50, 60. That doesn't mean you always get one, but but it's fun.
So Lea, I met you in connection with the Food Policy Council.
Yes.
How'd you get hooked up with that organization?
I think I first met the ones from Rural Advantage maybe a few years back. They had some meeting in Medelia, and I wasn't quite sure what it was dealing with, and I showed up and I somehow got on their mailing list. And I do because I have young children, I do have an emphasis on wanting kids to eat healthy and introduce them. So it's kind of how I got involved in the food policy, to make sure that consumers, children, are thought about also. Just a second. Kendra, you have to be quiet.
And what do you see as important? I mean, what are you working for in terms of policy, in terms of the stuff you're trying to do?
I want to make sure that the kids are eating fresh fruits and vegetables. Just with me seeing what kids are being fed at school, and most of the kids that my children grow up with, they're eating all packaged foods, and it just drives me crazy. So I'm hoping that the policies can be set so that there are better access to the fruits and vegetables, and we have local farmers. It seems like our food doesn't need to be shipped in from another country. or from another state, we could support the local farmers right around our area. And hoping that my children then can benefit from healthier food policies.
So things like farm to school kinds of programs?
That would be really great. Medelia has not been a leader in that, and I would love to get them to be. So if there's the parents that want it to be, hopefully administration will take heart and develop that. But it's exciting to hear what other towns are doing, because it's great to hear and talk to food service people in other towns and just say how the kids, once they're introduced to a food, they may not understand what it is, but once they kind of learn about it and get a taste it, the kids will like it. And one year, talking about that, is kids, my daughter was, I think she was in kindergarten, and the Girl Scouts planted a little garden, and then the early childhood kids harvested it. And I showed up with my daughter's Girl Scout troop, and I brought a big pan of pea pods in. And most of the kids had never tried pea pods before. And they were just picked from my garden, and a lot of the parents that were there helping with the children looked at them like, and I just kind of led the kids to say, hey, come on, Mom and Dads, they haven't tried one, why don't you try one? And they were hesitant, but they were the parent, so they thought they better. And the kids did not want to try it. Of course, my daughter's thinking they're the best thing in the world, but kind of backing off when all of her friends wouldn't touch them. But a few of the parents are like, hey, these are good. And by the end of the planting with the Girl Scouts, they were all gone. One girl tried it, other than my daughter, and they all kept going back. So that's what I like, is introducing the kids to new foods. The kids love edamames, my daughters, just because I planted them one year, and yeah, they just love popping them out of their the shells and eating them. And if my kids love them, why can't other kids love them? And I just think it's, they're just not introduced to it. And the kids will just get used to eating their other foods that are out of a bag, and they come to enjoy that without knowing what else is available.
Sounds like you think good food is really important for kids. Is there more that goes along with that?
I guess one thing I can do is provide an education for them and a good foundation of where foods, it's not the foods out of the box that I think are going to be what they need to survive. It's real food. My one daughter was kind of getting tired of daycare. She thought she was too old. She went about one day a week at the time, and thought maybe it was time for her to stop. So she told me, and I kept saying she had to go, and the best one was the lady. She told me that the lady cooked from a box, Mom. And she opens cans up with the food, and I don't think you'd want me to go there. So that was her way of trying to get out of it, knowing that might work. And I was telling this sweet daycare lady, and she's laughing, and the next mom said, I love it here because my kid's getting a meal that's cooked besides, something quick. That was what her kids were getting at home, and I laughed because my children thought that was the way to get them not to have to go to daycare anymore. But it had nothing to do with that. It was just they thought they were too old. But yeah, my kids, and if I try to open a can, they will call me on it. They are smart enough. Mom, are you starting to cook from a can now? But now my oldest is 8, and she can peel the skins off the tomatoes, so she helps with the salsa. We had a real, you didn't get involved. I think we came out one day when you were gone. We picked sweet corn and made corn salsa, and someone was in charge of shucking. The kids consider it a factory, and they just love it. And they each had their little job, and my husband got involved, and we had a family night of making corn salsa. And thank goodness I had one that I had made a jar from a couple of years prior to that. I had not made any for a couple of years, and we opened that jar up, and the kids were just in heaven. And here, they were gonna have theirs after it got canned, but, that's the nice part is now they're getting old enough and they are enjoying it. The kids love those, green beans. They're a little spicy, pickled green beans, and they will eat that. My oldest loves those, and now she's old enough to help out.
And the spaghetti sauce that you
Oh,
make, that's
yeah.
good.
We even took that to the Boundary Waters, the fresh spaghetti sauce one year. We went to the Boundary Waters a year ago with Bryce, and we were trying to come up with meals, and he said, "Oh, you got to bring that spaghetti sauce." So he had to bring the cooler though, with the ice. But yeah, we had that, and we also took snuck in pea pods into the Boundary Waters. So
I like to eat, and not dried stuff.
Yeah, we had a lot of food, but the pea pods, yeah, he opened those up, the bag up, and I don't think he got many. It was between the girls and I. Had those devoured the first night in the Boundary Waters. Fresh pea pods that he had picked. Yeah.
That's why they were picked, though.
That was fun.
Well, I think that's what I have. Valentine, if you anything you want to follow up with before? Very welcome.
I was thinking about this question of farm to school, and I've been thinking about it a lot because we've been talking to people who are running these community gardens and kind of community feeding projects, and I've just been struck as how much we're hearing the story of people trying to get food into the system, kind of like it's almost like a system that's kind of a leaky box and people are stuffing food into all the cracks, trying to get those like food into places for people. And I'm curious about what you think will make this work on a more systems level. Because the people who are trying to do it through the market keep saying they can't do it in a way where people can afford it. Like that, to buy...
That and the consistency you may have to have.
Right.
That might be the hardest part. I mean, we have a short growing season here. But you could in the fall get the sweet corn in there more often. Some of the small private schools have made their own, they get together and they like used to make their sweet corn. A farmer would donate all the sweet corn and they would can and free sweet corn for the school year. Somebody would donate a hog to butcher, and that would be their pork for the school year.
And I did hear, and I'm just through the grapevine, that the small Lutheran school in St. James, they're going to do a tomato. They're going to can a bunch of tomatoes. And they take in a lot of the fresh food in that, I did hear.
Yeah. But it's also government regulated. It's got to probably be certified and inspected and all of that stuff. And I can see why, but there should be ways of working around that. Some, like, I would love to deliver more squash and watermelon to like the rest homes and stuff. Muskmelon especially, because there the seed is gone and the older people can really eat muskmelon. Most of them like it. The watermelon, I deliver a lot of that. They make the salad out of it where they take a spoon and scoop so they can get rid of a lot of the seed. They don't have to worry about the seed. But there's a lot of extra preparation, I think, for anything that's coming off the farm that, well, it takes time. And time costs money. And the schools right now are working on that slim dime. Some of them probably say a slim penny.
Well, I will say the schools now with the new changes I have seen, because my children are there and it's only been a week and a half, but yeah, the kids are coming home where there are new salads and spinach. They don't eat every day at school, but they will tell me what their friends are eating, and they have said so. They were asking why there's new items on the menu, my children, and so it's good to see that there are changes. Kind of funny to note, I said that Mrs. Obama helped push it through, and the 8-year-old said, "Well, what if Barack Obama doesn't get reelected, does that mean we're going back to the old food? And so, I mean, that's how the little kids understand things. But they noticed the difference. And only in a week and a half of school, they noticed a change as to what was on the menu, different items. So, healthier choices, I assume. I haven't gotten to see how fresh the stuff is, but to have an 8-year-old notice that is, I thought, remarkable.
Well, I think they changed. Used to be a pie or the triangle, now it's a pie. So the county extension and the,
They're back to a plate now.
no, now they're back to a
They're
plate.
back to a plate. I just
anyway,
use the old. The kids need 5. Mine is 5 to 8 fruits and vegetables, and I try to get them that. And I always tell them maybe let's try for 8 to 10 because that way we might reach the 8. And so different times of the year, I'll go through streaks where I'll ask the kids what they ate for fruits and vegetables, and they try to come up with all of them. But yeah, it's hard as a parent to get those to your children. That means the snacks at school you send them are always going to be a fruit or vegetable. And I pack their lunches most days so that I know what they're eating. If it comes home, I know what they didn't eat too. So
they get frozen watermelon all year long at school.
yeah.
I mean, what fresher than that.
So I freeze my watermelon in hunks and little chunks and take it out in the morning, and by lunch they have it's a little cool for them, but it's just right. They like that. They've taken ground cherries to school. They have commented. He wouldn't let me plant ground cherries out here. They were invasive, apparently.
They're a weed.
But the kids love them. I never really cared for them when I first had them, but my little kid did. She was about 4, and now we have actually my neighbor on the other side. He doesn't like them, but he allowed the girls to plant a little patch of ground cherries. So they ground cherries they've taken to school. The kids have commented that they've had aides and teachers ask them what they're eating because they have their little lunch and they've brought spring rolls. Edamames, they're popping them. So the kids will comment on that people don't quite understand what we're eating, Mom. I'm like, someday they might. And it's hard for them because I will comment. One of my children has asked for the little crackers that come in a little strip with the little thing you dip cheese on because her friends are eating that. And
They're good.
She's had them before, but she's hinting that that'd be nice to take for snacks. So I'm like, well, yes, that would be, but it may not be the healthiest choice. So as long as Bryce lets me keep gardening, they're going to have lots of watermelon and cantaloupe. I froze a lot of cantaloupe too. And we eat quite well at our house. I can't say we're ever short of fruits or vegetables. And it's good tasting stuff. That's the best part. I could buy it at the store, but it just does not have the taste.
And it's fun. I mean, it's fun. Well, you can see how active the girls are. And when they're out here, I enjoy it. They're just having the kids around. It's an extra little noise and chatter, and we like to watch what grows out there, or we like to watch the flowers that grow. You've seen them, and it is relaxing now. Maybe that's why there's more weeds. I'm getting older. I turned 61 today, I think.
Today, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot easier to sit outside here and watch the weeds grow than what it used to be. But we just get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And like I say, I get a lot of enjoyment of delivering stuff to people that aren't expecting it. And after a while, they expect it. But that's a good thing. And I guess that's just about how we do it. We have a good time. We can work together, or Lea may be here, and if I feel like it, I'll go join her out there in the garden. If I don't, I don't. But usually I will if I know she's here, but she sneaks in and out
Bryce,
Pretty good.
Bryce keeps the garden pretty weeded. I have to say he does more than his share there. I don't always keep up on that end. And was it a year ago or two? He was gone on a week's vacation, and I thought I'd really surprise him. So I talked to my husband, taking a half a day off of work and coming out and helping me weed. And I don't think he even noticed that we had weeded.
Half a day doesn't cut it.
I was out all day, but it was just kind of comical because I thought, oh, Bryce is going to come home to this wonderful place, and it sure takes a long time to weed a section when it's that big. In some years, there hasn't been as many weeds. This year was, but we still got the produce out. So
Tiller broke out. That's a good excuse. They got to put a new
So-
motor on the tiller this year. So, or next spring. It ain't going to get done this year.
So it's just not that we didn't have enough food, so,
No.
but a few more weeds.
That way the deer won't find the produce quite as easy.
Do you have time for one more?
Oh, sure.
There's the one of the students that I had that was working with me for a long time was from West Central Minnesota, and he was saying that where he was from, everybody had a garden like this, and that as a young man he knew how to can because that's one of the skills he had, and he was afraid that as this became cool in the Twin Cities, that like the fact that it was becoming kind of something hipsters did would make it less cool in rural areas. But I'm really curious. Like, is it something kids around here grow up knowing how to do?
Actually, they say the circle has come around. They're doing more and more extensions. They're doing more and more how to can. More people are asking about it now. If you ever watch Ag Day, they've showed where down like in the Carolinas and stuff, they really are asking, and they're putting classes out there, and a lot of young people are coming in, and because just 10 years ago, not that many people even gardened really. Well, in the last 5 years, there's a lot of people gardening now that weren't, and I think a lot of that has to do with the price of groceries. You can't figure your work worth. Time is not worth anything, but what you're getting out of it is worth a lot. The food, the exercise,
And
and if you're lucky enough, somebody to garden with.
And it's fun just watching the kids.
Yeah.
I think that's when they pick up a green pepper and eat it like an apple. It's just amazing. They love
Cherry tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes.
Plop them in.
They'll pop those in. Raspberries, my kids, and that to me, I always like getting pictures of them in the fall when they're out in the garden eating or just eating straight out because my kids know no different. This is the way they've been raised and the way they love it. Now, as to the younger generation, I was at a school function a week ago, the first week of school, and a mother across from me, and I have to be at least 15 years older than her, but her daughter's the same age as mine, and she was talking about not having too many tomatoes, and she's gotten into gardening the last couple of years, and the mother right next to her, who also was quite young, she goes, "Oh, I have a whole bag of tomatoes in my refrigerator. I'm not going to get to canning them." So this lady who was asking about tomatoes ended up, and it just amazed me because they are quite a bit younger, and now they are. And I've had more people ask me that are younger than me about how to grow things. And they just start off small, but, they'll, "Hey, Leah, I got this. What do I do with kale? What do I do with this?"
It grows. I got a whole row out there. I thought it was.
No, that was Swiss chard. You
Oh,
thought it
okay.
was beets.
Top looks the same.
He told me he weeded the beets when I went out to pick a beet one day, and they were all Swiss char. There was no beets under that.
I lived in New Zealand for a while and they call it silver beet. The tops. Because what we call Swiss chard,
Is
they call
silver
beet.
beets? Oh,
'Cause it is kind of the
kind
same
of the
family.
same.
It just you don't get nothing underneath.
Exactly. It's just all it is.
Yeah, I go for the weird stuff. Bryce likes those potatoes. He likes the traditional stuff. But for younger generation, there is. It is surprising me now how many, because they know I garden and I do things and people are asking, and I'm hoping with my kids now in 4-H, of getting some of their friends involved. I was hoping this year, but maybe next year, doing sauerkraut and teaching them how it ferments. I can't even say it now, but
Oh, it stinks.
how it stinks. But just it's a process, and how you can eat something that you're just rotting basically is for kids that's different. But it'd be fun just to have some rot in my house again. I guess it does not smell like they say it does, and have their friends all get to witness how you can eat food that's really just rotted food. It's not quite, but
Specifically.
it's not that way, but to them,
Right.
there's a science behind it. So I do think there are, as opposed to maybe 10 years ago. But, I've lived down here in southern Minnesota 15, 20 years, and I've always met people and found new recipes. It's just you gotta get in with the right group, and they're always in, someone's always got something, and then I have to try it, and that's how it kind of works.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Happy birthday, Bo.